summer trolling for trout can be both very frustrating but very rewarding. So today, let's go through the top 10 summer trolling for trout tips to help you catch more trout. What is up, Outdoor Mavericks? Welcome back to the channel and the latest summer trout fishing tips video, where today we're featuring tips all about trolling for trout in the dog days of summer. Now, I love summer trout fishing because of how long in the day that you can fish, but also you get on some really good bites as well as some really big trout. So to help you troll for trout in the summer and get on those big bites, here's my 10 tips. Now, tip number 10 dives right into baits, and that is that chartreuse and metallic colors are your friend. In summertime trout fishing, over the majority of the day, you're going to have a lot of sunlight hitting the water, and as those trout go from more shallow water into more deeper water, the more metallic baits and the more bright baits like chartreuse are going to be some of the best that you can utilize to get on the trout bite, and especially those big trout. And for me, when using metallic colors, I always use gold in the morning and on cloudy days, silver when it's always sunny out, and then copper I just use no matter what time of the day. I play around with that one and never get consistent bites on specific times of the day, but I use that consistently over all of the day. And then when it comes to chartreuse, the trout absolutely love that color in the summertime. So when you need to get on those bigger, deeper bites, grab metallics and grab chartreuse and get ready for a big takedown. Now, coming in at tip number 9 is to constantly adjust your depth that you're fishing. Now, this is critical because as the fish migrate and move around the lake as you're trolling, in the morning time, they might be a little bit shallower in the water. And then as the water gets warmer and the sun gets up and the day gets warmer, they may shift into more deeper water. And when you've got that spring and into summer transition before it gets super hot, those trout are going to move from the shallows out into the deeper water. And then in the summertime, they are going to stay deep. They're not really going to get shallow. You're going to want to get out deep and adjust your depth based off of where you're marking fish on the fish finder. So as you're going around, make sure that you're adjusting your depth until you find that perfect number on your line counter and then get after them. Now, similar to tip number 9, tip number 8 also has to do with depth, and that is to watch where the thermocline is on the lake. Now, trout relate a lot to the thermocline because they want to be in the cooler water that has more oxygen, and the thermocline is not that. That's kind of that heavier, more darker, more just less oxygen and more warmer water. But as you're trolling around and you see where the fish are, you might find a pattern or see fish at a specific number on the fish finder, and that's going to kind of give you an advantage and tell you, okay, the thermocline might be here and the trout might be here, which is going to give you a huge advantage in figuring out what depth that you need to troll to get after those trout. And once you find that thermocline number, mark that down and make your adjustments to your depth accordingly. And once you do that, I guarantee you're going to get on some really good bites and possibly find that trout lunker on the lake. Now, coming in at tip number 7 is to start fishing earlier. And in the summertime, I am a huge proponent of fishing early as possible in the day. Because first, you're going to get on a better bite earlier in the morning. Secondly, you could get those trout that are higher up in the water column and even some fish that are busting and going after flies. Third, it is a lot more difficult to catch trout in the summertime as the water really warms up and you have really hot temperatures. As they get deeper, the bite might shut off, but in the early hours, you have a better chance of getting on the bite. And the fourth thing, I like to hit the water early and get off the water early, because in a lot of places that I fish, a lot of the recreational anglers are out there, they're doing water jet skiing or on their ski jet, and people just horsing around enjoying the lake. They get out there at about 10, 11 o'clock, and it just becomes a zoo. The boat launches become absolute insanity. Rather than having to deal with all that mess, I go in and I fish early and I get off the water early before the circus and the zoo comes to town. Now, coming in at tip number 6 is to avoid still water. And for anglers, you really want to focus your trolling in areas where you've got moving water and flowing water, where you got little creeks and inlets coming into big lakes where you're trolling. There's going to be colder water and water with more oxygen and more food. So as you're planning your day, or you know that there's specific spots in the lake or reservoir that you're fishing where the trout like to stack up, focus your time and energy on those areas with more flowing, moving water. So say it's a new place that you're fishing, go find flowing water. And if it's a body of water you have a lot of knowledge with, stick to those areas that have the flowing water and moving water rather than the stale water, and you're going to increase your hookup ratio a lot. Now, tip number 5 again has to do with baits, and that is to get in the action. And by action, we're talking about your bait action behind your dodger, your flasher, and the bling that you've got in the water. Now, that might come to fruition whether it's spoons, spinners, plugs, little rapalas, maybe even trolling some flies. You want action in your bait. So as you're preparing your baits or trying to figure out what you might be attacking the trout with for the day, grab some baits that are going to have a lot of action, because your rod tip's going to keep folding down and have a lot of action too. Now, tip number 4 also has to do with baits again, and that is to be very scent friendly. Now, in summertime trout fishing, especially trolling, scent is your friend, and you want to make sure no matter what type of bait that you're fishing, that you have some sort of scent or some sort of bait with scent attached to it to really get a good bite going. Now, for me, there's 4 particular scents that I pay very close attention to that I use a ton in the summertime when I'm trolling. The first being corn, the second being crawfish or crayfish, crawdad scent, whatever you want to call it. The third being worm and nightcrawler scent, and the fourth being garlic. Those 4 scents are the ones that I think in the warmer water, when the fish are really on the bite in the summertime, are the best when it comes to trolling. And once you apply the scent to your baits, make sure you close it up and don't leave it open, because you might accidentally step on it and it's all over the boat. Don't ask me how I know. Now, tip number 3 is to go chrome and go silver, and this is in particular to the dodger and flasher colors that you're using in front of your baits that you're trolling. As I said earlier, when it comes to summer trout fishing, you're going to have a lot of sun throughout the entire portion of the day, which means that silver is going to be one of the best colors to use. And for flashers and dodgers, not only to get the movement in the water, but with the sun beating down on those flashers or those dodgers, that silver is going to illuminate and have a lot of UV and a lot of glare, and the fish are going to be able to see that from a long ways away in really deep water. So as you're picking your dodgers and your flashers, my first go-tos is to go chrome and silver, and then from there I'll make slight adjustments or some changes throughout the day depending on how the bite is going. But if you want to give yourself the best opportunity and be most consistent throughout the entire summer season, use chrome and use silver with your flashers. Now, tip number 2 has to do with trolling speed, and that is to go about 1.5 to 2.5 miles an hour when you're trolling for trout in the summer. When you've got warmer weather and warmer water conditions, the trout metabolism is increasing, which means they're going to be going after a lot of different baits and really be on the bite, which means you're going to want to have more action with your lures, which also means that you need to speed up your troll to get more flash, more movement out of your baits, and that in particular is probably around 1.5 to 2.5 miles an hour. Now, that's general kind of the range to be, because depending on the lake, the reservoir, or wherever you're trout fishing, you might have to make slight adjustments to your speed. But unlike in winter and cooler water conditions where you might be between a mile an hour and say 1.5 miles an hour trolling slower, in the summer you want to be a lot faster on the troll. Once you find that right miles per hour to troll, stick on that and the trout are going to be coming all the time. So now that we've gone through tips 2 through 10, well, what's tip number 1? Well, that is to start trolling in deeper water. And yes, it makes sense when you go from spring into summertime trout fishing, and when you're trolling, the trout are going to move from shallower waters into much deeper waters. So you need to start making adjustments in trolling in deeper water. Now that might mean going from 10 feet to 20 feet. It could also mean going up to 50 feet or even deeper, depending on the depth of where the trout are at and what you're seeing on the fish finder. So when you hit the water for summertime trout fishing, go deep and you're gonna find some really big bites and some really fun days fishing. And there you guys have it, the top 10 summer trolling for trout tips. Hope you guys got some great information today, and if you did, smash that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and as always, you guys, the outdoors is a gift. Go trolling with others.